Public Interest. I am Malika Ramsey. This week we deal with education, and with me to talk about education is leader of the People's National Congress Reform and leader of the opposition. Welcome, Mr. Granger.
Thank you very much, Malika.
A partnership for national unity has recently called for a commission of inquiry into the public education system. Now, Mr. Granger, I know that one of the things that APNU is saying is that there is sufficient evidence to require a formal investigation into the entire public education system. What is sufficient evidence?
Well, it's more than anecdotal. We can look at any level of the national education system and see that there's been a high level of incompetence or mismanagement or non-performance, whatever you choose to call it. For example, at the level of the primary school, when children are prepared for the National Grade 6 assessment, we discovered that more than half of the children in the school fail everything. There are 4 subjects, and half of our children are failing all 4 subjects. And that is in itself is a disaster, because it means that they are really not fit to advance beyond that stage. They're not even fit to go into secondary school because they're not qualified. So that is evidence. When we look at the CSEC, the Caribbean examination, we see that the number of children passing mathematics, and in order to graduate and what they call matriculate from secondary school, you need to pass English and mathematics. But the majority of children, that is over 70% of children, fail mathematics. English is a little better, but still bad. But when you go beyond that into the University of Ghana, we see that there are other problems. They're very poor funding, and many employers are dissatisfied with the quality of UG students. And I've been to University of Ghana myself, and you need good lecturers, you need good libraries, you need good laboratories, you need better funding at the university. So when you look at all of the levels, vertically from primary right through to university, we see that there's a high level of dysfunctionality. Secondly, when you look at the education system horizontally, what is happening at the coastland and the hinterland, when you look at what is happening in the schools, we see that there are other problems. Among the teachers, we discover that the Teaching Service Commission has been dismissing, sometimes on average, more than 2 or 3 teachers a week. So we're busy training teachers at this here Potter College of Education, and because of all sorts of problems. Some of the problems are criminal problems. We're talking about, tampering with certificates, forging certificates. You're talking about carnal knowledge of students, which could be statutory rape. You're talking about theft of school funds. These are things that can get teachers in jail. So we have problems with teachers. We have problems with students. There have been gang violence. I know there have been a few cases, not many, in which children have been stabbed. 1 or 2 cases, children have been killed by other students. Children have attacked teachers. One, I remember, the teacher's skull was cracked. And then we have cases in some hinterland school, children have been dismissed for smoking marijuana or prolonged absenteeism and all sorts of problems. And more serious than delinquency. A few years ago, you were a bad boy or a bad girl if you got away to go to movies, but now people are getting involved in all sorts of very, criminal behavior, and in some cases, antisocial behavior. I remember one education officer was telling us of cases of group sex in secondary schools and gang violence. So you think you're on the streets of LA, but this is what is happening in our schools. So when we speak of evidence, we're speaking not only vertically throughout the system from the highest down to the lowest, but you're also speaking horizontally. You're also speaking about all of the problems that affect the ability of our children to get a full education.
Let me ask you, sir, you mentioned deviant behavior not only from students, but even some teachers. And I know we're not dealing with crime here, but it all affects the public education system. What do you think are some of the things driving our students and even our teachers to this sort of deviant behavior?
Well, I wouldn't blame the students. I blame the system. Students come into the system more or less prepared to learn. They're prepared to be taught. And it is because of what they find in the system that the behavior becomes deviant. I don't think the students come in deviant. Some of them may come from poor backgrounds, but I am confident that if the system functions, if teachers are efficient, and there are sufficient resources in the institutions, children will want to learn. But when we look at the schools, we see that there are no playgrounds. We see that there are no canteens. We see there are no gymnasiums. There's no culture. There are no film shows. So instead of the school becoming a center, or the center of a child's life, it becomes a place for delinquency. They get caught up in gangs, Gaza and Gully type of gang behavior. They become threats to the teachers. They get involved in sexual and other forms of misconduct. So I don't blame the students, I blame the system in which they have been put. In the second instance, the teachers themselves are products of the system. Mm-hmm. So we need to envisage a Cyril Potter College of Education. We need to envisage a teacher training college at which any forms of deviant behavior are quickly identified and corrected by the school. Some persons may not be fit to put in the classrooms, as teachers. But if a person spent 2-3 years at teacher training college, you must pick it up. You must be able to get that person to behave in a manner that the institution requires the person to behave. And so, if a person is a sexual pervert or a thief, or habitually absent or rude or type of person, you could pick up that behavior over a long course. Because I think for many students, student teachers, the course of education is residential, and you would be able to pick up, in fact, you must be able to erase some of those bad habits and inculcate the correct habits that we require for teachers. So the system, we have to look at what happens in the school, what happens at university, what happens at the Cyril Potter College of Education, and start to turn behavior around. I do not blame the students, I blame the system, and it is our responsibility, and I consider myself part of the government in terms of being the opposition, the legislative branch of the government, to turn that behavior around and give students a break so that they could become, better citizens.
I'd like to step back a bit to something you spoke about earlier, and that has to do with the students at the national grade 6 level. Now, you did say that more than half of those students are failing everything. Why?
Well, we have to come back to the system. We have to come back to the quality of teachers. We have to come back to the curriculum. We have to come back to the way that they are prepared, because it's really an examination. People use different language. One time it was called common entrance. People used to call it scholarship class, then common entrance, then secondary school entrance exam, then they call it national grade 6 assessment. Whatever you call it, it is the gateway through which primary school children enter. They must pass through this gateway to get into secondary school. What is happening is that perhaps from the primary level, when you go into these schools, you wonder what sort of confusion there is, because in most of the public schools, we discover that sometimes there are not sufficient teachers. We discover that there's not sufficient furniture. We discover that people don't have the books, and the schools might be unruly. Sometimes the teachers are not qualified to teach. And the question I always ask, If you were going into an airplane to fly to America and you discovered that the pilot was untrained and unqualified, if you'd still go? Of course, the answer is no. Nobody's going to go into an airplane with an unqualified pilot. Why do we send our children into school with unqualified teachers? So that is a big problem. And the result is that by age 11, after about 5 or 6 years of education, the child cannot read or write, cannot count, and many of our children are not really qualified to enter secondary school. So the problem starts when that child comes into contact with the school system, particularly the public education system. But let me point this out, Malaika. Children in private schools are doing much better. And year by year, we see that the best or the highest qualified students are those who attend primary schools. The problem is that we are creating in Guyana a sort of educational apartheid, that rich children or children of rich parents who can afford to give them the facilities they need, they may have a personal computer at home, they may have books at home, they have lights at home. Sometimes, you may discover that a poor child in a primary school, when you visit that child's home, there's no light. They're not connected to the GPL. It's not a blackout they're talking about, there are no electrical fittings, So when we have children coming from poor households and going to poor public schools, and we have children coming from richer households going to pay schools, we discover that Guyanese society, rather than becoming one, is becoming divided. That's what apartheid means, apartness. They're being kept apart. The poor are being kept apart from the rich. So over and over again, when we look at the results, we see children from the middle class or better off families doing better than children from the poorer families. So all of these problems exist, and the education system is meant to be the great equalizer, not by bringing intelligent children down, but by moving everybody up to the same standard. And that is why we must have a public education system which provides the best quality of education to all of our children.
I'm not sure how detailed you can be on the response to this next question, sir, and I'm not trying to pick at the private schools, but do you know if any research has been done to decipher exactly how many of this grouping that is failing all of the subjects? Do you know how many of them actually come from the private schools? Is that possible for you to see?
No, I don't have that information. Okay. What I do know is that the hinterland regions have been underperforming in this regard. Okay. That at the national grade 6 level, children from the Barima Waini, the Kuyuni Mazruni, Putaro Siparuni, and Rupununi, which are the main regions, 1, 7, 8, and 9, have been performing very poorly. In fact, in region 8, that is the Putaro Siparuni, the child with the highest grade was about 468. And people have a sort of cutoff point around, I would say, the 500-point mark. And the brightest child in the entire region 8 was, I think, about 468 or something like that. So it is possible to determine that, or to conclude that a large number of the failures come from the hinterland. Similarly, a large number of the dropouts, because children drop out both at the primary and secondary level, and the majority, I think, are dropping out from the hinterland. On a per capita basis, more children drop out of hinterland schools than schools in other areas, for different reasons. For example, many children in hinterland areas who are not in the schools with dormitories have to travel considerable distances to get to school. Sometimes they become homesick. There was a case in Waramadang Secondary School where children actually left school to go back to their villages in the middle of the term. And these are things we have to think about in the education system. And for these reasons, we feel that the time has come when we need to have a thorough investigation.
Okay.
There are too many problems at all levels and across the spectrum, and we need to have an investigation so we get the information to find out what really are the problems which need to be fixed. And that's why we've called for a commission of inquiry. It doesn't have to be elaborate, but what it has to be is investigative so that we get to the bottom of these problems. Is there a problem with teachers? Is there a problem with students? Is there a problem with parents? Is there a problem with infrastructure? Is there a problem with the curriculum? Mm-hmm. And the best way to find out what these problems are is by a commission of inquiry. Many people, when they hear about the commission of inquiry, they feel this is going to be some massive multi-million-dollar expenditure. Let me assure people that in most organizations there are inquiries. Even if you're running a bank, if you're running a major manufacturing enterprise, there's a burglary, there's a loss of cash, well, of course you conduct an inquiry. You know, you may get somebody from outside, or you may get a senior official to find out what happened. Call the witnesses, well, who last entered this office, who last handled the money, and write it up and say, well, come to certain conclusions. There was negligence, or there was a break-in, whatever it is. That's all the inquiry is about. It is not about millions of dollars, you know, getting people from Jamaica or around the world. It is about finding out what the truth is. Getting information to provide a remedy to the disease.
All right. Before I talk a little more about the Commission of Inquiry, which seems that seems well thought out indeed. Your critics in recent days would have accused the opposition of not necessarily celebrating the education system and waiting until, you know, when we hear about the fancy results to pick, and that's not necessarily my word, to pick on the failures. And at the same time, I should probably ask you for your thoughts on the student who recently topped. I think it's not only Guyana she topped in, but probably the entire Caribbean. That's a student who would have gotten 20 subjects, 1s and 2s. Your thoughts on all of that, and including the fact that you've been accused, well, not yourself personally, but APNU has been accused of picking on the failures in the education system instead of celebrating the successes.
Well, we did congratulate the top students. We did congratulate the students who did well. We did extend our support to the students who did not do well, pledging that we will help them to do better. As far as the students who did very well, I'm not maybe intimately familiar with the present education system to know why it is necessary to spend time doing 20 subjects. I've been told that in some other countries there's a limit on the number of subjects a person can take. The idea is that a child's education must be rounded. It must be seen in a holistic way. A child's education is not a matter of going to school and cramming to pass exams. This is when your character is being formed. This is when your opinions are being formed. This is when, you know, you're exposed to culture, especially in a place like Guyana, the culture of other ethnic groups, the culture of other parts of the country. And it should be a time of adventure. It should be a time of finding out. It should be an exciting time, the most exciting time of your life. When you look back at your adolescence, you must be able to say, yes, I learned a lot about Rupununi, about the quarantine. I learned a lot about boating. I learned a lot about the flora and fauna of Guyana. I love my country. It's a beautiful country because I've been able to pay visits. I learned a lot about sport, you know. I've been able to do a bit of hockey, a bit of volleyball. I learned culture. I learned about debating. I learned music. This is an exciting time of a child's life, and it is undesirable to force a child to be going to lessons from 6 o'clock in the morning to 6 or 7 o'clock at night, and then at the end of it say, okay, the child's got 20 subjects or 18 subjects, whatever it is. I do believe that, I don't take any way if that is the parent's choice. Well, if that's the child's choice, that's a matter for the family. But I'm interested in national unity. I'm interested in seeing children develop in an unrounded way. And I'm interested in seeing more sport in schools, more culture, more attention to the humanities. That is, the subjects which make us human, you know. And I do believe that when you look back at some of the scholars of years gone by, you would see that they were pretty rounded. You would see that somebody like Norman Cameron, who was a well-known educator, was a great sportsman. Cyril Potter himself, after whom the Cyril Potter College of Education was named. He attended Queen's College, he attended college in Jamaica, and he's a well-known sportsman. So he wasn't spending 12 hours burning books. He was on the sports field. He's a man of culture. He was the man who composed the national anthem. He composed several songs, Vedang Demerara, I think one is called. So when you read about the life of Cyril Potter, you say, hey, this man is really educated, And when I spoke to graduates of the Cyril Potter College of Education some time ago, I said, my greatest wish is that you all could be like Cyril Potter, not, bookworms, but rounded personalities.
I am going to come to the Commission of Inquiry regarding the National Assembly in a bit, but what I want to ask you now, how can we get all on board with this kind of Commission of Inquiry? And I'm talking here government and opposition aside. How can you get probably religious bodies? I mean, there are times when the private sector speak out on certain things. How can you get those bodies, civil society, and again, government and opposition aside, how can you get them on board to deal with this matter and to support the Commission of Inquiry?
Well, they're already on board. Okay. I think I cannot recall speaking to any business person who is not concerned about the education system, but we must look at it at two levels. One, I would like to say that at the level of the National Assembly, we will be able to influence policy in a positive way by having a Commission of Inquiry. We'll be able to find out for ourselves. We'll be able to have debates in the National Assembly about the budget, where money should be placed, how much should be given to the University of Guyana, and that sort of thing. And we'll be able to advise the government on that, how much should be given to teacher education. And at the other level, we feel that civil society, non-governmental organizations, even individuals have a role to play. In the People's National Congress reform, as you know, last year we started something called the BEST. We set up an education trust inside our party so that children who qualify at the National Grade 6 examination could be given bursaries to help them to advance through the secondary school system. So if our party has done it, I am aware that some businessmen actually support students to get through secondary examinations. At this time of the year, too, you would have seen that different organizations, I think the Guyana Police Force and maybe insurance companies, have presented bursaries to children of their workers, of the members of those organizations. So I think that concern about the education system is pretty widespread. I don't think it would be difficult to convince them that they should step forward and put their money where the children are.
Okay. You did mention just now that you did talk about the fact that you can use the National Assembly to push this agenda. What is the possible next step? And I know Parliament is currently in recess, but what is the possible next step regarding this matter in the National Assembly? What can you possibly do next?
We will press for a Commission of Inquiry to be established.
Okay.
That's the first next step. The second next step would be that if the government fails to convene or establish a Commission of Inquiry, we have the option of setting up or inviting members of the officialdom, the Ministry of Education in particular, the Guyana Teachers Union, to come before the committee, Parliamentary Committee on Human Services, to give evidence, to ask why these things are happening to our students. But in the final analysis, we can press for information. You know, we can ask questions. I myself have asked several questions concerning the human condition, and we can continue to take action so that as a result of that, we could improve or we could introduce measures in the National Assembly or in the government which can improve the quality of education. So there's a lot we can do once we have that information. What I do not want to happen is that we start to do what the government has been doing for several years, that they feel that there is too many children are failing, so they invent some No Child Left Behind policy. And of course, after 2 or 3 years, people say this thing's not working, because the students just relax. Whether I study or not, whether I pass or not, I have to be advanced. So if the government does not have the information, they will not implement the correct policies. And that's why there's so much failure in the system. There's a failure of policies, a failure of leadership, there's a failure of management. And those failures are contributing to the failure of our students. So we want to get the information, and having that information, we'll be able to guide education policy into giving children that good life that we promise them.
Thank you very much, sir. Well said. Thank you very much, viewers. This has been another program of The Public Interest. I am Malaika Ramsey. Thanks for watching.